started?
Yeah, I spent a lot of time reading the poem over the last couple of days, and I watched your guys' take on it, the video take on it.
Yeah.
And I love the poem. I think it covers so much kind of emotional ground for me. But I was wondering, in a larger sense, that this poem kind of brought up, and I think probably more poems coming up will bring up. And I hope this isn't too dumb of a question, but is there like a way of defining something that's a prose poem? That is there a point, or is there a way where it just becomes prose, where you don't feel like you're still in sort of a poetic space where do you understand that?
Yeah, I think I do. Would you let me rephrase your question, and if I'm creating a synonymous way of asking, that would be good, but if I'm changing your question, you can either allow my change or correct me. Can I try this?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. So I think in part, and Lee, you have the portable mic, so we're going to go to Lee and then maybe Katie on this, all right? So I think you're saying what constitutes a poem as a poem that distinguishes it from prose, and one of the things that does is the way a line is written, the lyricism of a single line. Another way is, of course, lineating and not making it prose. Does this poem, which seems to use prose-like arbitrary lineation, and doesn't have necessarily poetic language, but in this case the language of an instruction manual combined with the language of a tour guide, a tourist, travel writing. How are we at sea here in knowing what the poetic elements are?
Yeah, that's basically the question. But also going further, are there points? Is there poetry that you've read, maybe from more contemporary authors and things like that, where you will actually look at it and say, I don't. This is on the border. I don't know if this is a poem. Is this really prose?
Sure. And all the poetry that I like is on the border. All the poetry that I like is saying to me, "Hey Al, do you think this is a poem? I don't think this is a poem the way you think this is a poem. I think I want to try to chart new ground." And I think one of the reasons why everybody laughed and applauded when Ashbery in the 50s was reading this poem around at events was that they realized, this guy actually made this thing, this non-poetic thing, into a poem. So I'm going to turn to Lee and ask her to add anything she likes to this discussion, and then to Katie. Lee, put the mic right up to you, please.
I think you have to come back to me. I have to think about it.
Okay, good. Katie, what do you think?
I'd say a couple things. I think particularly in the 20th century, lots of poets sort of lose interest in this question, and that is what makes the poetry interesting, is that they're interested in different types of questions than how can this be poetic in the sense that it's a standard meter. It's more about content or using any type of language as poetry. So it's more about how the language is used than actually about, quote unquote, poetic notions of language.
That's good. That makes me think also that there are other categories of what makes a poem, and in this case, the conceptualism of the thing, the whole idea. Yes, it is a poem in that it's lineated, and it actually uses traditional poetic language, lyrical descriptions of colorful scenes in a place, that kind of crap. But it also, at the level of the poem as a concept, I'm going to write a poem which represents the thing I was not supposed to be writing, but wrote this instead. So I guess I want to turn to maybe Anna or Kristen or both, and ask them to speak about life, about the poet's life. What is Ashbery saying about the kind of life that he wants to lead as a poet through this experiment in what a poem is and what he's allowed to write and what he's not allowed to write? And it looks like Kristen is ready. She's smiling, so because there's no classes today.
Well,
would you start?
I think that what Ashbery is saying is that he doesn't want to lead that white-knuckled life. And he wants the freedom of being able to explore in his mind what is not in the instruction manual.
Right. Well said. And what about you personally?
Does
Is that you're a writer.
I mean,
You're in training now to lead the writer's life.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Well, I don't think I can do the white knuckled life. So I think I'm also in the anti-instruction manual training right now.
Yeah. But you use the word training.
Well, because I'm in school right now.
So
I'm still
you have a Columbia University instruction manual in anti-instruction manualism.
Yes, exactly.
You're in a box, and you're actually
That's what my MFA is in.
All right. On the other hand, Allie Castleman, who just came back from a fabulous experience at McSweeney's and is, I guess, kind of on furlough, figuring out what to do next. San Francisco, she's free. Anna, talk to Allie about the life of the writer.
Go, Allie. I guess what the reason why this poem is so much fun to read and why I just like really enjoy it so much is that what he's playing with is finding the poetic language in the instruction manual and making us think about the instruction manualese that we read, and that even that language at its most prosaic can in fact be poetry when you approach it as a poem. So maybe we should throw it to Emily. Emily, you said this in one of the discussion forums. Do you remember this post that you wrote?
You can remind me if you'd like.
Yeah, you wrote this really awesome post. No, Emily wrote this really amazing post about how you approach the language that we find in a regular instruction manual that you see. I think you use an air conditioner as your example.
I do remember that.
You remember this now? Okay, Emily, go.
Oh, this is great. Al doesn't have a purpose anymore. Let's just go around.
No, I'm telling you, sure this
you were doing it for me.
Right, Emily.
Yeah, I talked about how context matters a lot in determining what a poem is, and if you found this instruction manual in a box with an air conditioner, you'd have some license to think of it just as an instruction manual. It doesn't signal itself as something you should consider poetically. But when a poet is writing an instruction manual, you can begin to infer with a bit of confidence that you're dealing with something that's poetically intended, which is commenting on itself as language and commenting on an instruction manual as such.
This is a cousin of Duchamp. It's a cousin of Williams and the refrigerator note. So if you, in fact, when we get to chapter 9.3, which is our conceptualism chapter, it's a section of chapter 9, the last week of the course, there are going to be poets there who would take that air conditioning manual and retype it and say this is a poem, which is not so newfangled because it's actually what Duchamp did all those years before, and in a way what Williams did. And so the question is, Craig and everybody else, and Kristen in her instruction manual situation, is if we read, if we read the telephone book and say it's a poem, can we start to hear the beauty of the sounds of the names of people? And the answer is yes. I want to go to Lee and then back to Michael, and then we're going to... Craig, are you still on the line?
Yeah, I'm here.
So I want to go to Lee and then Michael, and then I'm going to give you a chance to say a final word on this before you hang up. Is that okay?
Sure.
Great. Lee.
I kind of want to build on what Kristen said about that anti-instruction manual writing. Because, see, like with my life, I'm a writer. I write poetry. I write novels. But then I have a job where I am writing the mundane.
You're actually living the Ashbery situation. Kristen is not at the moment, because Kristen's totally in the I'm a writer mode.
Well, I do both. I have to switch in and out of them. But what I started to notice, and I think after I read this poem last year in Modpo, is that it gave me that kind of spark to be like, okay, I can live the instruction manual life and use it to create beautiful things. And I think that was the turning point for me with this poem. Was you can take things that are mundane, you could take things that are tedious. Writing an instruction manual is boring, but then you take it out of context and you make it something new, and it becomes that much more enjoyable.
Yes.
So.
Good. While the mic is passing its way back to Michael and Dan, I'll just note that I think Ashbery, one of the reasons we attach ourselves to Ashbery, the young Ashbery, is because most of us feel like we're in a similar situation, where the thing we really want to write is the thing we're not currently supposed to write. It is such a human condition, a modern human condition. It's amazing it took that long in the age of avant-gardism for someone to come up with that idea. Michael, hi.
Daniel says that for him, or spells that for him, if the love of language, or at least the awareness of language, predominates, then for him the writing becomes poetic. If it predominates over information. Sorry.
Dan's not going to like this, but I'm going to ask you to repeat that.
Okay, let me read it.
Yeah, Dan typed it on the iPad.
I feel that if the love or awareness of language predominates over information, it's poetic.
Wow. I don't know who is going to... Oh, I'll put Craig on the spot. Craig, did you hear what Dan said?
Yeah, I heard that.
Do you want to try to respond to that?
I tend to agree with it, and I didn't want to sound like I was sort of like retro and that I needed to hear...
You didn't sound that way.
Okay, I just there's also a question maybe of that I do butt up against a little bit, is having to rely on knowing an artist's intention. It's like I sort of sometimes butt up against that, even in like the visual arts. Do you,
right.
Do you need to? Does the artist's intention, the authorship of that, really should that be that important?
Allie, can I ask you a question? Oh, Craig, thank you for the comment and the question. And would you hang up and listen to the answer through the video stream so we can get another call?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you so much for calling.
Okay.
215-573-9752. Allie, do you know what the intention of the instruction manual is from reading it, or do you have to learn other stuff about Ashbery's life? And talk close to the mic.
I don't really think you need... I mean, I guess it's helpful to know that he was doing this type of writing, but it doesn't really matter what John Ashbery was doing. It matters what the narrator of the speaker of the poem was doing.
And he also he inscribes it into the poem, the situation.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think Craig is right to worry about intention in other poems where this happens, but in this poem, it's so programmatic. He makes it really clear.